relate that topic which we are waiting. So I think now you are clear with all 8 principles, and we have also discussed some properties of those principles, right? So by that we can actually realize what is the importance of each principle, and if you want to achieve that principle, what are the characteristics which we should achieve, right, by doing that. Okay, so let us just try to observe these questions. So what is the difference between reusability and composability, right? So can't we say that aren't we reusing when composing a service, right? So actually these two principles are related, right? Or you can say similar in some sense. So we will answer these questions later on. I'm just discussing the questions right now. The second is, what is the difference between autonomy and statelessness? Now actually both of them have a common focus, that is independence, right? Autonomy says that the control should be there over the logic, and statelessness says that we should not remember the state, right? So that is also, in one sense, you are saying that we want to be independent, right? Similarly, loose coupling and service contract also focus on the same aspect, right? Minimize the dependency, right? Through contract, we can achieve loose coupling, right? And that's what I think we have seen yesterday. Fine. So if you want to answer these questions, we need to study interrelation between various principles, right? And that is what is the goal for today. So let us start. So now we are just using the short form, or we are going to use the short form of each principle. We won't say that services are reusable. We'll say that this reusability principle. Similarly, we have the other principles like service contract, loose coupling, abstraction, composability, autonomy, statelessness, and discoverability, right? So just to remember that these are the 8 principles. Out of that, 4 are core principles, remaining are non-core principles, right? So let us begin with the first principle, right? Now, when I discuss the principles, I'll be covering 2 concepts for each principle. One is supported by section for each principle, and the other would be supports section, right? So let us first clear out this before we go ahead. Supported by means this principle requires other principles to be fulfilled, right? So I can say that reusability is supported by X principle, right? So X has to be fulfilled, then only reusability is achievable. Is that point clear? Supported by, right? Or you can say you are dependent on those principles, right? Whatever principles will be writing in supported by section, right? You can say that our principle depends on them, right? Or they have to be realized first, in other words, okay? The second is supports. Supports is opposite. That means if you achieve reusability, you can achieve principle Y. If you achieve reusability, you can achieve principle Y. Is that fine? Supports, right? Is the concept clear? Because we'll be seeing each principle based on this concept. Okay? Is it okay to all? Yes, so let us begin with the reusability principle. Yes, yes. Which are the core principles? Contract, loose coupling, abstraction, and, okay, can anyone fulfill that from this list? Contract, loose coupling, abstraction, and let me ask you to all as well, right, before I answer. Which is the remaining principle? Yes, yes, that is autonomy, right? Fine with it? Autonomy is again very important, right? Yes. Okay. So let us start with reusability, which is a non-core principle. So definitely, reusability would require support of other principles, ideally. Yes or no? Because it is a non-core principle, right? So it would require support of other principles, right? So which section will have many principles? Supported by or supports? Let me just clarify before we go ahead so that, yes, correct. Supported by will have a long list, right? If not long, it will be at least 1 or 2 principles, right? It won't be empty. Okay, fine. So we have already seen reusable, right? What do you mean by reusability? When a service encapsulates the logic that is useful to more than one service requester, right? Or it is used by same requester multiple times, right? Okay, either you are supporting multiple requesters or you are using the same logic multiple times. It is reusability, right? So it is supported by a number of principles. Let us go for the first one, autonomy. Yes, some non-core principle is dependent on core principle, then non-core should also be in core principle list. No, don't confuse like that, Ujit. See, basically, although those four are core principles, right, but they require support of some other, right? That is the concept, right? That is why. Okay, so only one principle is there which is totally independent, right? So just remember this question. I'm going to ask you this question in the end. Which principle is completely independent? Okay, we'll be going through that question in the end of this class. Okay, fine. The others always require support of some other principles, right? Okay, so autonomy. So if your service is autonomous, that means you have control over the logic. And if you have control over the logic, is it going to be reusable? Or can I say it is independent and that is why it is reusable? Are you getting the logic behind my answer, right? Okay, so no need to remember this answers, right? You can answer that, just remember the concept, okay? So service is independent, it can govern itself, so we can reuse it, definitely, right? Okay, so autonomy is the first principle, right? Then comes statelessness. So reusability is supported by statelessness. Fine. Why? Because if your service is stateless, that means, can I say that it is highly available? It is using a fire and forget kind of pattern in most of the cases, right? So can I say that it is highly available? Right? So if it is highly available, that means it can be reused. Okay, fine. Let us go for the third one, abstraction. Abstraction fosters reuse because it establishes black box concept. So if you are hiding the logic very well, right, then clients would be finding it easy to consume your service. Do you agree with this? If you are hiding your logic very well, then clients would be finding it easy to connect to your service, right? Are you getting this point? Second point? Yes. So every principle has a justification, right? So that's why you should remember that, right? As a concept, okay? Let us go for the third one. Discoverability promotes the reusability, right? Because see, if the service is not discoverable, can you reuse it? I'll ask a counter question of this, right? Can you reuse a service which is not discoverable? No, right? So it has to be discoverable, then only it is reusable, right? So I think this is a direct relation, right? Okay. Let us go for the last one, loose coupling. Loose coupling establishes inherent independence, right? Because we know that you connect to the service using the service contract, fine? So you are not aware of that service in advance, right? So if you are not being connected for the entire period of time, can we say that I can have better chances to connect to that service? Or it is having more availability, similar to statelessness? It is loosely coupled. That means it is not connected to other services. If it is not connected, you can reuse it. Very clear, right? Are you all fine with this? Right? Are you able to understand the justifications? Right? It is very important, right? Okay, fine. Now tell me, from this list, reusability supports which principle? Reusability supports which principle? See, we have seen loose coupling, abstraction, autonomy, statelessness, discoverability. So we are not supposed to cover everything, right? Don't confuse with that, right? We will only see the principles which are directly connected. Okay, we won't see indirect connection. But do you find a principle from this list which can be achieved if reusability is there? Correct. It is composability, right? Because if your service is reusable, then only it can be composed, right? Because composition requires that your service should have a reusable logic, right? Otherwise, there is no point. Fine. Either you are composing at runtime or at design time. Ultimately, first of all, you have to be reusable. Is that clear? Is that fine to all? I'll go to that slide now. So, reusability supports composability, right? So, it is primarily possible because of reuse. Okay, very clear? Fine. Are you all fine with this now? What is reusability and what is its dependence? I have the diagrams also, but that I want you to go through, right? After we are finished with this, right? I'll upload this slide today itself, right? Fine. So you can see there are more incoming arrows. Can you see there are 5 incoming arrows, right? On reusability. Yeah. So that means, okay. Yes. Sorry. It is 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One is in outgoing. Yes. Prince, can you observe that? Composability has outgoing arrow. Yes. So what do we mean by this incoming and outgoing arrows? Incoming means you require support, or you can say you are supported by those principles. And when you are having outgoing, that means you are supporting. Yes. What about contract? So contract is not directly related to reusability, right? It is having indirect relation. That is why it is not there, right? As I said earlier, whatever principles that are directly related, that is what we'll see. Other principles are realizable, but you will have to form a chain, right? If you have raised this point, let us find out where contract is realizable. Yes, can anyone tell me? Because see, for reusability, we require discoverability. But for discoverability, what do we require? Are you getting the chain, sorry. Reusability requires discoverability and discoverability requires contract. So now have we found the link, missing link, Prince? Right? So likewise, we can think, right? Okay. So every diagram will not have 8 principles. Just remember that concept. Yes, contract is required, Priyank. That's right. So I can draw an arrow from contract to discoverability. Would that be fine? From contract to discoverability? Yes, yes, correct, right? Okay. So again, I'll repeat. We will not be having a diagram which has all 8 principles, because some principles are indirectly achievable, some are directly achievable. Okay. We will only see directly achievable principles. Is that point clear? Okay. Some diagrams you will find where only 3 principles are there, right? But that is true. Okay. We'll see. Now let us go for the next one, contract, right? As we all know, contract is a core principle. Okay. So what is contract? It is a collection of metadata and legal documents, right? That's why it is written as collective metadata. Right? It is metadata plus legal documents. It defines the rules and conditions that have to be fulfilled by the requester. Okay, it defines the rules and conditions that have to be fulfilled by the requester. Okay. Next, contract supports other principles, right? Because it is a core principle, so definitely you will find that it is going to help others, right? Through contract, abstraction is possible, right? Because if your contract is properly designed, then only we can say that abstraction is properly achieved. Yes or no? If your interface is properly designed, then only you can say that you are having abstraction, right? Yes or no? Do you agree as a programmer as well? Because see, if you don't have an interface, can we say that we are having contract or abstraction? No, right? Interface, the purpose of interface is just to show the signatures. So actually it is having the abstraction. Okay. So there is a direct relation between abstraction and contract. Okay, fine. Loose coupling is made possible through contract, right? Because we all know that first we browse the web service WSDL file and then only we connect to the service. So what we require first? Contract. And then only we can say that it is loosely coupled. Agreed? Not vice versa, right? Are you clear with this? Can I say that if loose coupling is there, then contract is possible? Will that be correct, or the reverse seems more logical? Yes, reverse seems more logical. That means if contract is there, loose coupling is made possible. Okay, so I hope now you are getting the idea, right? What I was discussing yesterday, I think I'm able to answer those questions which you were asking, right? Specifically, yes, Priyank, Urjit, and others, right? Those were asking. Yes. Okay. Fine. Let us now go for the next one. Contract is independent. It is not dependent. Yes. Yes, Prince. So actually, you have asked the question which I was supposed to ask in the end. You can observe the figure, and I think that answers your question. Right? It is a totally independent principle. Is that fine? Right? And I would say this is the only principle which is totally independent. Right? Even loose coupling depends on something. Contract includes business rules in terms of policies. Right? We have seen WS policy specification, right? So yes, I would say that it includes business rules, right? See, it is a collection of three things: your WSDL, XZD schema, and policy, plus legal documents, right? So everything is there in contract, and that is why it is a core principle, right? Okay. So let us cover the remaining two. Composability. Obviously, if contract is published, then only you can compose the service, right? I think I don't need to explain this, right? Are you clear with this? Yeah. So it is a very obvious aspect. Discoverability is based on the contract, right? If contract is there, then only you can say that it is discoverable, right? If you have not created a contract, the service is not discoverable. Fine? Are you clear with these four? Right? Let us observe. So all arrows outgoing, right? That means, hence it is proved that it is a core principle plus it is independent of all. Okay? So before you achieve anything, right, out of 8 principles, what would be your first target to achieve? Ideally, you will first go for contract. And that is why every programming language put emphasis on designing the interfaces, right? This is the reason. Fine. No matter what language you are using, either Java or C#, right? Interfaces are useful, right? Okay. Let us go for the next one, loose coupling, right? Loose coupling is a state that supports level of independence, right? As we know, we first discover the service and then we call the service, right? We are not dependent on that service from beginning. Okay, that is what is the concept of loose coupling. Independence or non-dependency is a fundamental aspect of services and SOA. Hence, loose coupling is a core principle. Okay, because if you design dependent architecture, then it would be the same thing like client server or distributed architecture of earlier days. It won't be called an SOA, right? So this is again a fundamental principle. Yes, are you clear with this? And that's why loose coupling you find in every lecture at least once, right? Okay. Fine, let us go for the supports side, right? Obviously, it is a core principle, so it supports multiple principles. If it is loosely coupled, that means it is having independence. And if it is having independence, it can be reused. Yes or no? Right? So let us go through it. Reusability is supported through loose coupling because services are freed from tight dependencies, right? And this increases their availability. As availability increases, reuse will increase, right? Next is composability. Now, wherever you have reusability, I think you are now fine with this concept. Reusability leads to composability, right? We have seen that, right? So this principle will come together with it, right? So composability is fostered, or you can say achieved, by loose coupling, especially when services are dynamically composed. Yesterday, we have seen the example of dynamic composition and static composition, right? So where we have static composition, in which concept? Yes, in which concept we have static composition? At service level, yes, that's fine. But in which of the concepts we have seen that we are defining composition in the at design time, not at runtime? Just go back to the principles which we have seen: coordination, orchestration, choreography, security. Yes, it is at design time, but which concept does that? I think we answered that yesterday only. Yes, orchestration, correct, right? It is orchestration. Coordination, I would say, usually happens at runtime because you are composing the services and then you will come to know what are your participants, right, Kaushal? So that is at runtime mostly, right? But in orchestration, you are statically defining. That is, when I receive the invoice, I will call first ledger service, right? Or sorry, I will call vendor profile service. Then I will call ledger service and so on, right? So we are defining at design time. Is it fine, right? So composability is possible to achieve, right, if the system is loosely coupled, right? Statelessness, fine. Statelessness is directly supported through loosely coupled communication, right? Obviously, if you are having less dependency, yes, I got your question, Priyank. But actually, this is a two-way sword, I would say, right? I can draw a two-way arrow as well, right? So although author has not put this principle in supported by a section, right? But yes, you can definitely put that under supported by section. Your point is correct, right? But where it is more suitable, that is more important. And see, if it is loosely coupled, that means we are having independence, right? If services are independent, then we have to maintain less state information or more state information. Or in other words, loose coupling means we are using message-based communication framework, right? And when we are using message-based communication framework, statelessness would be easy to achieve. I'm just asking the question in the other way, right? So yes, right? So now my question is, where it suits more, in support section or in supported by? I already given you the answer that it can be put in both these sections, right? But where it is put, ideally in supports, because if it is loosely coupled, yes, Priyank, I agree with your point, right? Correct. Right, but see, the author has put this in supports because of only one reason. That is, we are relying on the message-based communication, right? And if you rely on message-based communication, and if your system is loosely coupled, okay, then statelessness would be easy to achieve. Are you getting? Right? Statelessness would be easy to achieve because we are having loosely coupled communication framework, that is SOAP message, right? And that is why it is there over here. Okay, it is supported by contract. Yes, we'll see that, right? Only one principle it depends upon, and that is contract, right? And as Priyank has said, you can also put statelessness over here, but that will create ambiguity, and that's why we are going for more suitable side. Priyank, I think now you are fine with that. As far as my justification, yes, okay. So autonomy, let us first cover the support section. If there is less dependency, then you will be able to control your logic more. Yes or no? If there is less dependency, you will have more control over your logic. Can I say that or not? Yes, right? And that is why we say that autonomy is possible through loose coupling, as it is the nature of loose coupling that minimizes cross-service dependency. And as there are less dependencies, more control is there. That means autonomy is achieved. Agreed? Right? Okay. Let us now go for supported by. So we already know the answer, right? Contracts. If contracts are not there, loose coupling is not possible. Plain and simple statement. I hope you agree to this, right? Because first we have to browse the service, right? We have to discover the service. And for discoverability, we require contracts. Okay. So it is written over here. Contract is the only piece of information required for the service interaction. Okay. So are you clear with loose coupling now? Can we have a look at the diagram? Right? Okay, let us observe. So again, as expected, more outgoing arrows, right? And I think you can read the statement of statelessness, which is written by the author. Service loose coupling establishes the environment, right, that promotes statelessness. So as we are using, you can say, communication framework, which can handle the state information, right? So by doing that, statelessness is going to be actually automatically achieved. I hope you agree to this, right? All of you. Okay, so that is why this is more suitable, right? Fine. Okay, and where it is outgoing, service loose coupling minimizes cross-service dependencies in support of. Sorry, I read the incorrect statement. In terms of contract, right? You have incoming edge from the contract, right? So service loose coupling is enabled by the contract, right? Okay, so 4 outgoing arrows, that means loose coupling supports those 4 principles. 1 incoming, that means it is supported by 1. Okay, so we have covered 2 core principles. Let us go for 1 more, right? Abstraction is actually something which is indirectly related to multiple principles. Right? It is not having direct relation between multiple principles, although it is a core principle, right? So first of all, let us answer why it is core principle, right? So part of building solution with independent services is allowing those services to encapsulate potentially complex processing logic, right? No matter what is your code, right? 1000 lines, 5000 lines, right? Ultimately, we have to show a simpler interface outside. Okay, and we should try to keep it as generic as possible. Okay, as I discussed yesterday also, you can use the concept like templates or anything like that, right? So that your operation signature are more or less generic. Okay, plus it is descriptive. Descriptive in the sense it should describe whatever operations are there and what they are doing, right? And that's why we create that WSDL file, right? That makes your contract look good. It describes everything. Okay. So now, do you agree that abstraction is a core principle? It has to be there as a part of core principles. Because ultimately, if you don't hide the code well, will you be able to achieve other principles? A straight, simple question. If code is not properly hidden, can you achieve other principles easily? No, right? And that is why we can say that abstraction is a core principle. Okay. Let us look at the simpler diagram. As I said earlier, you will not find all 8 principles in some of the principles. It is just like a black box, and that is why it is not having direct relation with other principles, right? So let us look at the principles which are directly connected. It is supported by contract. Okay, and as we all know, contract is again a core principle. Okay, so it depends, yes, but it depends again on core principle. Are you getting? Right? Okay, so I think you are now clear. If contract is there, then abstraction is possible to achieve. Or you can say contract is called official description, okay, and it is made public to the external service requester. If contract is well defined, well published, then you can say that your service is having proper abstraction, okay, and it supports reusability, okay, directly, fine, because if contract is published, then only it can be reused, okay. Do you find or do you think discoverability should be placed anywhere in this? Because I think discoverability and contract are related again. Yes, if you want to fit discoverability, it has to be there in supports, right? But it is not mentioned over here because discoverability, yes, it is indirect concept. Discoverability was not the first goal of SOA, right? People, when the SOA architecture was designed, then they realized that if we go for discoverability aspect, then we will be able to achieve more independence, right? And that is why it was added later. Okay, so that's why it is indirectly supported principle, right? So abstraction is very simple in terms of diagram, but it is still a core principle. Is that fine to all? Yes, are we clear with all four principles that we have seen? Okay, so don't confuse why other principles are not there. The simple answer is they are indirectly achievable, not directly. Okay, fine. So let us now go for the next one, composability, right? Composability says that designing the services so that they support composition by others, obviously, right? You want to be composed by others. And that is again fundamental to building service-oriented solution, right? We always make services which can be composed by other services either at runtime or at design time, okay? Because ultimately we have to achieve the broader goal, and for achieving the broader goal, you have to go through small steps, okay? So let us now go for composability. Okay, is it a core principle or non-core? It is a non-core principle, right? So let us see the list. Obviously, supported by would be lengthier over here, right? So composability is supported by reusability, right? Right? We have seen the counterpoint when we discuss reusability, right? Remember that? So after studying at least 3 to 4 principles, you can cross-relate, right? Okay. So if it is reusable, then only it can be composed by numerous others. Okay. Service loose coupling establishes a communication framework that supports the concept of dynamic composition, right? At runtime, if loose coupling is not there, you will never be able to achieve dynamic composition because all your services would be connected to each other, right? So you won't be able to compose the service based on requirement. Right? Agreed to this second point? Okay. Statelessness. Statelessness supports composability, especially in larger composition. Now, why this is written over here? If you have larger composition, then you will have to maintain more state information. Yes or no? Remember WS coordination, we were having 5 to 6 services, right? Coordinated by a single coordinator, right? So as the number of services grow, right, in communication, more context information has to be maintained. Okay. So if you want composability to be achieved in terms of large composition, first of all, everything has to be stateless. Agreed? Yes, Urjit. Loose coupling and statelessness. We have just answered that, right? Loose coupling and statelessness are also having relation over here, right? I hope, yes, this is this slide. Okay. So, see, there is a direct relation between statelessness and composability, and that is why it is over here. And what is the direct relation? This reason. Whenever you go for large composition, that means large number of services, you will have to maintain more state information. I hope you agree with that, right? I'll repeat once. As you suppose, for example, you are composing only 2 services, right? And on the other side, you are composing 6 services, right? Statelessness using loose coupling. Yes, yes. But that we have seen where in the case of loose coupling principle, right? But wherever there is a direct relation, we have to cover that principle, right? Okay, yes, you can draw an arrow if you want. You can draw an arrow from statelessness to loose coupling, right? Fine, or it should be loose coupling to statelessness. What do you think? Loose coupling requires statelessness or vice versa? Where it was? Loose coupling supports statelessness, right? It can be a bidirectional arrow, as I said earlier, right? But see, there is a direct relation. Yes, yes, there is a direct relation between composability and loose coupling, right? And the justification is different in both the cases. Why we have kept loose coupling over here? Because if your architecture is loosely coupled, that means there is less dependency. If there is less dependency, you can compose better. Got that statement? Yes. Now I'll answer for the statelessness, right? If you are composing more than 5 to 6 services, right? In that case, you will require more state information, right? So if you are maintaining better statelessness, composability would be easy to achieve. Agreed? Right? And that is why it is there in the supported by section. Okay? Fine. So yes, after studying 5 to 6 principles, you might find a cross mapping somewhere. It was a good point that you raised. But wherever we have a direct relation, only those principles which we are covering, right? Okay. Fine. Autonomy. Autonomy held by composition members strengthens the composition. Let me explain this in the other way. Suppose every service has total control over its logic, right? Complete control. You are not dependent on logic for other services, right? Can it be better composed if it is having complete control? Yes, right? If it was having dependency, suppose you are having account service which is dependent upon invoice, let us say load balancer, right? For example, right? I'm taking random names, okay? So whenever you are composing, you have to compose account and load balancer together, isn't it? Because they are dependent. Are you getting? Right? But what if account is totally independent, right? It is having complete control. Then I have to compose only one service. Got the point? Right? So that is why autonomy is a part of supported by section, right? Contract. Very obvious. We have seen this earlier also. If contract is not published, composition is not possible. Plain and simple. Clear? Is it fine? Yes. Okay. Now, service composability does not support any principle. So this is one principle which is, what can we say about that from the arrow? What one word can you form about this principle? Like we have said, contract is completely independent, right? What can we say about composability? It is completely dependent, right? If you want to achieve composability, first you think about other principles, then only it is going to be achieved. Is it fine, this figure? Okay, so I hope I'm making sense, right? I hope you're not getting confused, fine? I'm trying my best to clarify each statement, right, that is mentioned over here. See, these are design concepts, right? And that will be helpful when you will be working in designing of an architecture, right? Okay, let us now continue with next principle, that is autonomy, right? Autonomy is the principle that applies to the logic, obviously, right? It does not apply to the interface, it applies to the code that you are writing. Okay, when the call is there, yes, let me take the questions. When the call is there, the services are connected, coupled. Which are the principles that we care more? Because core principle is not there. Yes, I agree. But that is just for a fraction of time, isn't it, Urjit? While you process the SOAP message, right? But once your reply is ready, you will again be stateless, right? So loose coupling will actually not violate over there, right? You are receiving a message, then you are breaking the connection ideally, isn't it? In terms of SOA, right? You will not maintain a live connection. I hope you are getting right. Whenever your response is ready, you will send the reply. Okay. So still your architecture is loosely coupled. Yes. Okay. Let me take the question from Vishwat. After coupling, there are any principle? Yes. After coupling, you don't need to worry about others, right? Because as I said, loose coupling, if it is achieved, many other are automatically achieved, right? Because it supports others. So we should not worry about many of others, right? But yes, contract we should be taking care of, right? Because loose coupling requires contracts, right? Yes. Okay. Yes, Vishruth has the question. If two services are coupled, they have to be composed together. Yes, Vishruth. As I said earlier, if you are having two services, calling, let us say, you have customer service and account service, right? But your code is such where some of the customer methods are by mistake written in the account, right? So in that case, you can say that they are coupled, right? So they have to be composed together. Are you getting? So where we have to take care? When we design our code, right? Same concept that you studied in object-oriented programming. Which method should belong to which class, right? That is very, very important, right? No matter whether you are an excellent programmer, you are able to write the shortest possible code, but if your grouping is not proper, ultimately the architecture will fail, right? Okay. So let us now go for the next principle, autonomy. By providing an execution environment over which a service has complete control, autonomy relates to several other principles, right? Because autonomy gives you control. And if you control your logic, you can achieve more other principles, right? And that is why supports side would be heavier in this case, right? And we already know the supported by answer, right? We have already seen this earlier. Fine, let us go through this list, right? Autonomy supports reusability, right? So reusability is more achieved when service offering reusable logic helps self-governance. That means if it is having better control, less dependency, right? More reusability. Getting this first statement clear? Right? See, it is impossible to remember all these statements. I hope you are understanding, right? That is more important. In exam, you can write your answers in your own words. If it is asked in true, false, or if you're asked the characteristic of any principle, read and interpret. Okay? That is more important. Okay. Composability. Composability is also supported by autonomy as composition consisting of autonomous services is much more robust, right? And collectively independent, right? So if you are having control over the logic, that means there is less dependency in terms of logic. So then composability would be easy to achieve, right? Yes, Priyank has a question. If we have composability, then we need to write code in two different services or merge them. So actually, you should do like what you are doing in object-oriented programming, right? Suppose you have created an employee service, you have created an account service, right? Or you can say customer service, order service, right? So write the methods according to the service like you do in the class, right? And at runtime, they can be composed. Okay, code should never be merged. Are you getting? Because if you merge the code, again, what you are doing, you are violating the principle that your logic is not properly decomposed, right? And that is a common, you can say, design principle. It is not a service orientation principle, it is a design principle, right? Fine. So always, whenever you write your code, follow the object orientation concept, right? Write a method where it belongs. Okay. Okay. So are you clear with this second one? If it is autonomous, then easy to achieve composability, right? Right. Okay. Statelessness. Statelessness is best implemented by a service that can execute independently, obviously, because if it is independent, we have to maintain minimum state information, isn't it? Right? And we'll be more than happy, right, in this case, if we have to maintain minimum state information, right? All of you are clear with this third one, right? Okay, let us go for the fourth one, supported by loose coupling, right? If you are having loosely coupled architecture, right, then only autonomy is possible, right? Because first thing that we require is minimum interaction, right? If there is minimum interaction between services, then only you will have better control. Is this statement clear what I'm saying? If there is minimum interaction, then only you can have better control. Okay, so just call the service whenever required. Don't be connected. Clear with this? Right? The counter statement we have seen in earlier case, right? When we saw loose coupling, right? Let me just go back to that. See, where autonomy is present? In support section, right? This is support section of loose coupling, right? Is that fine? Right? I am being consistent, right? We are not mixing up the principles, okay? Fine. Let us look at the diagram now. So there are three outgoing arrows. As you can see, service autonomy increases the quality of statelessness, right? Service autonomy increases the quality of composability. It provides execution environment conducive to reusability, right? And autonomy is enabled by loose coupling. Okay, so only one incoming arrow. Let us go for statelessness. To successfully design services, not to manage state, requires what? It requires that availability of resources surrounding the service, to which state management should be delegated. I'll explain this statement in the other way. If you want to achieve statelessness, we have to assign the state management to some other entity. Yes or no? If services cannot maintain state, we throw that burden on the message, right? We have seen this, right? So we are delegating the responsibility of state management on the messaging framework, okay? And that is why statelessness is actually not a core principle. Right? This is the reason for which it is not a core principle. Because see, as I said yesterday also, statelessness can also be achieved through programming, right? Whatever programming framework that you are using or the protocols that you are using, right? You can take help of them, right? So that's why statelessness is not something which requires special attention. It can be easily achieved through programming, okay? So it is supported by which principles? Now I think we have seen the outgoing arrows, so we just have to look at the incoming arrows, right? So it is supported by autonomy, fine? If it is autonomous, that means you are having control over the logic, control over the execution environment, right? If you have control over the environment that reduces dependencies. And if there are less dependencies, statelessness would be easily achieved. Agreed? Yeah, okay. Loose coupling, similar answer, similar justification, I can say. Loose coupling says that we communicate using standard messaging framework, and we communicate using only when required. Okay. So if you reduce communication, and if you are using standard communication framework, statelessness would be easily achieved again, right? So if you have achieved loose coupling and autonomy, statelessness would come together, right? Mostly by default. Are you getting this? Yes, okay. It supports other principles also. So which principles are supported by statelessness, right? Okay, so it supports composability. So if you are having a stateless service, it is more available. If it is more available, it is reusable. If it is reusable, it is composable. Now I think, can you form the chain? Yes. I'll reiterate the statement. Composable means more available. More available means reusable, right? If it is reusable, it is composable. Hope you are not getting confused, right? Yes. Okay. So this is the other side. Okay. So this is such principle which is striking a balance. It depends on two principle and it supports two other, right? So this is the diagram for that. Okay. Let us now go for the last one. Discoverability. Discoverability says that designing the services so that they are naturally discoverable. Okay. And which enables the environment where service logic becomes accessible to new potential requesters. See, why we are making our services discoverable? Because right now you are having fixed number of clients, but what if in future a new client wants to communicate to you, right? They must get your wisdom, at least, if not policy and other things, right? So discoverability is again very, very important principle, right? But why we have not kept this principle under core? Because it requires the other principles to be realized first. Okay. And that is why it is not a core principle. Fine. But it is actually a core concept of SOA. I hope you are getting this statement, right? It is not a core principle, but it is a core concept. Right? Because it is the discoverability that helps us to achieve loose coupling, right? Can we say that? Because if discoverability was not there, then you might have to remain connected to the service forever, right? So discovery mechanism is actually very important, right? Okay, let us look at the diagram first, right? If you want, and then we'll go for the concept, right? So service discoverability supports reusability, right? Let us look at the justification. Discoverability is a medium to promote reusability. Obviously, if your if your service is discoverable, yes, correct, we should. If it is not discoverable, you may have to write that service again, right? And we are not writing the service again, that means it is reusable. Yes, I think you answered that in a better way, right? Are you clear with this part? Supports all of you? Yes. Now let us look at the other side, supported by. Obviously, if contract is there, then only I can discover a service. So there is a direct relation. Okay. Contracts are what service requesters actually discover and subsequently assess for suitability. Right. I think you remember what I explained you in the second or third lecture. That is, first you have to go through the repository. From that repository, you get the WSDL. You try to study that, right? And after you find that it is a suitable service, then only you call it, right? But now we have expanded that concept that it is not only about contract, WSDL. It is also about the policy documents, the rules that we are defining in the policy, right? So as we have come along about to end the syllabus, right? You should be clear with the path that we have taken, right? Okay, clear with this discoverability? Very simple principle. Okay. So we have covered total 8 principles. Let us just summarize this, right? Service orientation principles are not realized in isolation. Now I think that point should be clear. If I say that I want to achieve loose coupling, I will be able to achieve loose coupling without having help of others. Is that possible to achieve loose coupling without help of others? No, right? But one thing I can say for one principle, which is that which can be achieved independent of others, that is contract. And we achieve that through programming. Yes or no? We actually achieve contract through programming, right? We are creating well-defined interfaces in our program, right? That makes your contract well to read and easy to access, right? So actually contract does not depend upon the conceptual aspects. It depends upon your code, right? Okay. Principles such as reusability and composability benefit from the other principles. So if you want to select two most dependent principles, which would be the reusability and composability? Yes or no? You have just seen the diagrams, right? Two most dependent principles, right? They are reusability and composability. Fine. Principles such as loose coupling, contract, and autonomy provide significant support for the others, right? So that is why they are the foundation stones, right? These three plus abstraction, we should not forget. But abstraction is actually not related to other principles directly. That's why it is not over here. But again, abstraction is also a core principle. Okay. So are we all clear up to this? See, we have covered two major topics. First, we had covered each and every principle in detail yesterday. And today we have seen the interrelation, right? Now I'll be uploading the slides, right? As soon as this class is over. So you go through them once again, right? Because now we are going for a new topic from next week. That is going to be, again, what is the relation and difference, right? We have to see both the things. How service orientation and object orientation are related in terms of principles. Okay. Before I end, I'll ask a simple question. Reusability is focused in object orientation as well. When you write a program, would we prefer that if our code is reusable, then it can be used at multiple locations? Yes. And that is why you have the concept of packages and all those, right? Or even assemblies, right? In .NET. So reusability is a, yes, namespace, correct. Reusability is an important thing, right? Similarly, it is also important in terms of SOA. Are you finding that clear? Okay. So let us end the session for today. In next week, we'll start from here, right?